Hello, welcome to The Conversation on New Central Television. This is the program where we'll bring you up to speed with all the political happenings on the African continent. I am Gbenga Aborowa.
I am Rita Omodia, and talking about political happenings around the African continent, we have it that the Equatorial Guinea President Theodore Obiang Mbasogo is set to continue with his 43-year rule. And also within the weekend, we saw quite a failed coup attempt in Sao Tome and Principe.
Yes, and for the Equatorial Guinea elections, I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. We did discuss it here. I mean, what is anyone expecting? It was going to win. So I believe Equatorial Guinea is just a democracy in name, but yeah. So
I don't know what an 80-year-old man is set to continue again after ruling for 43 years. I mean, meanwhile in DRC, they've said elections will be December 20 next year. So an election to look forward to.
Yeah, it's 2023 is an election season on the continent. I believe there's an election in Liberia, Nigeria, and there are a few others to look out for.
So we're looking out for that.
Okay. Now, today on the program, we will go to Malawi, where the Anti-Corruption Bureau has finally laid its hands on Vice-president Saulos Chilima after months of investigations into alleged corruption against him. The anti-graft body on Friday arrested and charged Chilima on 6 counts of corruption for allegedly receiving $280,000 as a bribe from a British businessman in exchange for government contracts.
And away from Malawi, many South Africans are upset about the release of Janus Walus, the killer of anti-apartheid hero Chris Hani. After almost 3 decades in prison, Walus has been granted parole and will be a free man. Well, we'll be looking at the implications of this latest ruling on the program today. I mean, it brought back a lot of history, South Africa, their struggle against the anti-apartheid, and of course, white minority rule, democracy in South Africa and all that. So
anyway, when we get into the discussion, so many things to unpack there. But the man, observers say, you know, it's lived out his sentence.
Yeah.
Justice has been served. Is he remorseful? That's a question for another day. But the EFF and other protesters are saying, you know, he has to rot.
Not even the protesters. I mean, even the victims have a whole lot to say about that. And meanwhile, in Malawi, would we call it historic for a vice president? I mean, we've had series of accusations on the vice president.
Yeah, and then this is the first time on corruption charges. So it's not the first vice president that will be arrested. Because under Peter Mutharika, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the vice president was arrested on treason charges. But this is a whole kettle of fish, and that's what we're going to be discussing right now. So let's begin in Malawi, where Vice President Saulos Chilima was arrested and has been charged with multiple corruption offences by the country's anti-corruption bureau. Chilima's arrest is the climax of the year-long investigation by Malawian and British authorities into a bribery scandal that allegedly centres around multimillionaire Satta, a Malawi-born British citizen. Vice President Chilima is accused of receiving a share of $280,000 and other items from Satta, who allegedly sought to influence the award of lucrative government contracts, although Satta has denied any wrongdoing.
Previous attempts to question the vice president had been disrupted by his supporters. By the time of his court appearance on Friday afternoon, Chilima was vice president in name only. Earlier in June, President Lazarus Chakwera had suspended him from his duties when these allegations first surfaced. After being granted bail, Chilima avoided making any comment on the proceedings or his political future. He said, and I quote, "I have nothing to say except that we will let the process continue," end of quote. With Chilima as a key member of the United Transformation Movement political party, the current move by the ACB puts the future of Malawi's coalition government and the Dzonzi alliance in doubt. And now joining us for this conversation, we have Kusamba Dzonzi, Executive Director of Justice Link, joining us from Lilongwe, Malawi. We also have George Mhango, Malawian journalist, who joins us from Blantyre. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation. So, George, wonderful. So, George, if you're with us, I mean, would you really call this historic and unprecedented? And what's your reaction to the news of the Vice President Saulos Chilima's arrest on corruption charges?
one news that he definitely appeared before the Anti-Corruption Bureau in the morning of Friday last week, and then in the afternoon, it was in the courts of law in the capital city, Lilongwe. Everybody here in Malawi has been vehemently waiting forward to him appearing before the Anti-Corruption Bureau. As you might be aware that his delegatory powers to him were removed by President Lazarus Chakwera. That was in June, and soon after he was named to be one of those people that got some bribes from one Zuneth Satta. He wanted to be questioned by the SCB, but with these delays since June to this time, I think they're sending a signal that possibly government or the SCB wants a speedy handling of these bribery allegations leveled against him, as per 6 counts, 3, 2, and then the last one where he did not even divulge information to SCB and then police officers that he was being given bribes. So that's the last count that has been meted on him. But the public here in Malawi, if I can talk about maybe the way maybe we report issues of corruption, maybe good governance, democracy, and what have you, every Malawian is vehemently waiting to see to it that this case definitely is handled in a swiftness manner. As you might recall that there have been a number of other corrupt or corruption allegations leveled on senior government officials. One of them, Newton Kambala, his case is yet to start. We have one, Enoch Chihana, who is leader of the Alliance for Democracy. His case is yet to start. And then that of former Lands Minister, Kezi Msukwa. So all these kind of, corruption allegations, and with the coming in of Saulos Chilima appearing before the court and being charged, all Malawians want a speedy handling of it, despite the fact that there have been some divisions between the government agencies, like maybe the Director of Public Prosecution's Office and the Anti-Corruption Bureau, because there was debate at some point in time where the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, wanted or asked the SCB not just to be prosecuting or arresting people without the knowledge of the DPP's office. So all those kind of, political happenings in Malawi with what happened on Friday, we are yet to see as to what is going to happen. But the matter is that, yes, he's been charged with those 6 counts to do with one Zune Satta and then $280,000 having being alleged to have been pocketed.
Okay, George. President Lazarus Chakwera in July fired Chilima as Minister of Economic Planning and Development and stripped him of all his delegated power, leaving the Vice President with responsibility for reforms as his only other portfolio. Now that he has been arrested and charged to court, does Saulos Chilima remain Vice President of the Republic of Malawi?
He remains the Vice President of the Republic of Malawi constitutionally. Why? Because the Vice President is voted by the people. We go to polls to elect the President and then the Vice President at the same time. So he is still the Vice President, and President Lazarus Chakwera, there is no way he can fire him at the moment, only maybe through polls. That's how I understand things. Legally, it's not viable, and that is why Lazarus Chakwera said that based on the Constitution, he cannot fire Chilima. But what he can do is to, not give him or not to delegate some duties to him, meaning that at the moment, he is just a figure in the Vice Presidency office. If he wants to travel, maybe he can travel on his own errands, but not discharging government duties delegated to him by the president. Of course, the Ministry of Economic Planning was, removed from him way back before this development. So yes, Chilima is just busy doing his own stuff in his own office, but not those duties being delegated to him by the president. As you also might be able to know that this other time, President Lazarus Chakwera did travel to, say, Mozambique for a SADC conference before he relinquished that position as SADC chairperson. He, delegated the duties to one Vera Kantukure, the labor minister, to be like a stand-in, president. You see, so each time that he travels, more often he puts somebody else within the inner circle of the cabinet. Fine, recently he was just given the mantle, but without delegating him to do any government duties.
All right. Okay, I'd like to bring in Justin Kusamba Dzonzi to join us on this conversation. Now, we talk about the charges against the Vice-president Chilima, and right now we'll be looking at situations of the fair trial of Chilima. I mean, Lazarus Chakwera has hinted and continuously reiterated on the fight against corruption. And in May, he proposed the Economic and Financial Crimes Court. Now, how has this been responsible for a free and fair trial and even in the fight against corruption in Malawi? Justin, can you hear us? Justin? Go on, please. We can hear you.
Now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I was stating that the easiest starting point when one is dealing with this issue is to look at the period immediately before the Dzonzi Alliance took power. Malawi as a country was going through a phase where public opinion was that the government was hopelessly corrupt. Now, both the president and the vice president campaigned against that and to an extent won the people's hearts on the basis that they are going to deal with corruption very decisively. So the news, therefore, that within two years, the Dzonzi administration is itself embroiled in a lot of corruption, and the naming of the vice president on the list of the people who are connected to the Satta case came as a big shock to the nation. It's something that perhaps quite a lot of people are still yet to make peace with because others may not believe it. But in terms of our judicial processes and whether at this stage this case will specifically be dealt with by the Financial Crimes Court or not, I think the state of the law is that the Financial Crimes Court has not yet been established in terms of it being functional. A law has been passed, but I think it has not yet been gazetted for it to take effect. A number of judicial officers have been appointed and assigned to that court, but I should believe that for all practical purposes, this trial is going to commence in the general courts. I think it has already started in the magistrate court. It is likely going to be referred to the High Court. And perhaps if the Anti-Corruption Bureau is ready with its evidence, in all probability, the trial will commence even before the Financial Crimes Court is operational. So this would be my current understanding as things stand. But whether the case is heard by the Financial Crimes Court or the General Division, in my opinion, the judicial processes are basically going to be the same and the same rules are going to apply.
Okay, thank you very much, Justin. I'd like to bring back George in Blantyre. Now, George, according to a report by the Anti-Corruption Bureau, the Vice President and other 52 current and former officials had received money from British Malawian businessman Satta between 2017 and 2021. I know the trial is still going to establish the facts that are there and all of that during the trial process, but from your opinion and as a journalist, has there been any established connection between the Vice President and Satta? And also, what's the current status of Satta? Because he's at the center of all of this.
Currently, not much has been said to do with the vice president being linked or getting some alleged bribes, in this case from one Satta. The belief is that what the Anti-Corruption Bureau has provided to him in the Lilongwe Magistrate Court, that is what Malawians are now able to believe. As for how they got the information, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, according to what we heard on Friday, or that maybe through some messages on the phone, maybe some talks that he had with one Satta, CCTV footage. So all those kind of things, that are the issues that we have gotten as media to say these are the issues that the Anti-Corruption Bureau is trying to use, so that at least they vindicate as to why they say the vice president really was being enticed to be channeling most of the contracts to his companies, so that maybe he also pockets money at the end of the day. So
where's Zune Satta?
Zune Satta currently is in the United Kingdom, and apparently 2 months ago he also appeared in the court there to answer almost similar charges of corruption. You see, so he's still in the UK, and he also wanted to come to Malawi this other time in between the period that he was arrested in the UK there. But I think, the intelligence from Malawi said this guy cannot even come to Malawi because he needs to respond to the issues that have, emerged in London there. Suffice to say, at the same time, that, it is also remaining like quite a number of issues are happening, because in March this year, we are told that at the time when the allegations that are being leveled against Chilima were happening in March, he traveled to Malawi, and no one knows as to who was he meeting when Zune Satta came to Malawi. That was in March this year. Because even you ask the immigration department, the police people, they are now coming out to say, oh, indeed, he came here. But as to who received him at the airport in Lilongwe, that is not yet clear. So you can just imagine all these talks definitely are yet to be answered as to what is the actual truth. But the bottom line is, it is alleged that he was trying to, coax the vice president to use his powers as vice president to be giving contracts, because what is coming out is Zunes has 2 companies, and those companies wanted to defraud maybe government of taxes through dubious contracts that were to be facilitated by the vice president, but that is yet to be, concluded in the courts of Malawi, which Malawians are definitely vehemently waiting to be looking forward. You might recall the fact that 2025 is also coming forward, and what Saulos Chilima said is that he will be vindicated because he doesn't fear anything. His legal team is ready to challenge anything. But in as far as things are concerned, he thinks he's clean.
All right, I'd like to bring in Justin. From what you said now, the vice president is still saying that he's clean of all the allegations. And we're still trying to unravel the situation, the relationship between the vice president and, of course, the businessman who has been the eye of the center right now, Zune Satta. Now, Justin, the vice president supporters are saying that this is political persecution from President Chakwera. Now, do we have any reasons to believe these supporters, or can we say that the Anti-Corruption Bureau completely is independent of the president's office?
But so I think historically, the office of the vice president in Malawi has been a poison chalice insofar as I think the previous vice presidents have not really been able to complete their term of office. So if we take the vice president between 2004 and 2009, he was charged with the treason case and he didn't really complete his term. The vice president between 2009 and 2014 was also chucked out of the ruling party. So progressively, we have kind of created a situation where people think that the president, as soon as they win the elections, will do everything to take out the vice president, being a natural successor, out of the equation. So I do understand people's sentiments from that angle. But in terms of whether this is simply trumped up or not, my personal assessment is that's a big stretch, because in order for anyone to sustain an argument that this is politically motivated, you would have to make peace with an assumption that the government of Malawi is powerful enough to move the government of Britain to commence proceedings and to conduct investigations against the vice president, which the government of Britain does not even believe are true. Because the information which the Anti-Corruption Bureau is using is information that has been generated by the National Prosecution Agency of the United Kingdom. Now, I do not see how the Malawi government would ever convince the British government to be involved in a political ploy of this nature. So if there was a silver lining around this, we should take our comfort from the fact that the investigations are not just being done here in Malawi, they are also being done in the United Kingdom. And the evidence, as far as I am concerned, that the ACB is relying on has mostly been generated from that end. The other issue that I also am hoping that people should make peace with is, if the ACB alleges that we have video recordings, we have voice recordings, then how does anyone kind of generate that kind of situation? Because it would also mean then that the government here somehow got the vice president to be in that situation and then use that situation against the vice president. I think it's unfathomable for any person who is simply analyzing the information. And because of that, I should think that the ACB is acting on the information that has been provided to it and not necessarily acting politically. And just my final point on that is that we must also understand that the alleged list of the politicians that have been named actually comes from all the political parties in Malawi, not just UTM and MCP, but even DPP. So no political party has been spared. It even has names from the judiciary and lawyers, and some of the lawyers have been arrested. And so to imagine that all of this is politics, my view would be, I think you would be the one who is politicizing a situation that's perhaps otherwise completely judicial.
Thank you, Justin. Back to you, George. Justin talks about the politics. Now, still talking politics, what are the political implications and consequences of these charges against Vice-President Saulos Chilima? Can we say that the Dzonzi alliance that brought President Chakwera to power is effectively broken?
That's the current general feeling of people on the ground here, because the agreement that the two signed, or members of the Dzonzi alliance signed, has not yet been made public. But if I may quote what Saulos Chilima did indicate when he was, when his powers of delegation were removed, he said the agreement was not that the next poll should mean that Chakwera should stand again. So that signaled something else, that maybe, perhaps, this was like the last term for Chakwera, and then leave it to Chilima to stand, you see? So based on that clip and based on that statement, that is why Malawians are now able to say, I think the leadership that we have currently, who is also leading the Malawi Congress Party, wants to, fasten things up, so that Chakwera, so that Chilima does not stand in 2025, or at the same time spends more time in the courts of laws, so that at least he does not even have that time to be campaigning when the campaign period comes maybe in 2024, thereabout. So that's the general feeling of Malawians. But suffice to say that other alliance partners have also spoken much about what is happening in the alliance itself. One, for example, who is the secretary of the alliance itself, Kamusi Chivambo, has also hinted a couple of times that the government has to be serious about dealing with the plight of Malawians, forex shortage, fuel shortage, the fertilizer crisis issue, and not just the mere lip service of arresting its alliance partners. So all those kind of things point to the fact that maybe the current leadership wants to start dealing with the vice president, just like Justin Dzonzi, the human rights lawyer, indicated that, you know, the vice presidency office in Malawi is like a case. These people do not even work. They don't even discharge their duties. 2 years into the office, they are being labeled as maybe corrupt people or criminals, ABCD, so that maybe the attention of the people or their parties is not in tandem with what the vice president is doing. So politically, we can say maybe on the other hand, maybe the current leadership of the MCP wants to deal with the vice president. And, you know, a number of MCP officials have publicly said they want Chakwera to stand again in 2025. So where does that put the agreements of the Dzonzi Alliance and then the wishes of maybe the Vice President Saulos Chilima maybe to stand in 2025? So one is left with quite a number of questions.
Okay, now I'd like to bring in Justin quickly on this political alliance and, of course, politics in Malawi, of which we've seen presidents fall apart with their vices at some point in tenure. Now we have elections coming in 2025. I mean, how do you see this panning out?
Well, I can only speak largely from my legal knowledge and not so much about politics. So legally speaking, there are quite a number of things that would have to happen in order for the vice president to be eligible as a presidential candidate in 2025. The first is that under our constitution, he has exhausted his terms as a vice president, and therefore he cannot stand in 2025 as a vice president either of any political party or alliance, which means his only available option of participation is one of standing as a presidential candidate. But even that has then the next big problem, which is a Constitutional Court decision of 2009, where the Constitutional Court of Malawi said, if a president or a first vice president or second vice president exhausts his or her terms of office, then they are barred for life to stand for election in any of those offices. So the interpretation of that judgment is that a person who has exhausted his terms of office as vice president is therefore precluded from standing as a presidential candidate at the expiry of the second term, which is exactly where the vice president currently is. And so even before he puts his dreams of standing as a presidential candidate in 2025, his legal team would have to deal with this disqualifier, which, as far as we are concerned at this point, is a judicial decision which is binding, which wasn't appealed against. And even the Malawi Law Society weighed in to provide this kind of advice, I think some 12 months ago or so, where they said, unless that decision is set aside, then the vice president is barred from standing as a vice president as well as a presidential candidate. So I think from a legal point, those would be the critical issues that the vice president has to deal with if his dreams of becoming a candidate in 2025 are to be realized.
Well, a lot of critical issues there for Saulos Chilima. Thank you so much for joining us.